10?
I
Big
think so,
10?
maybe.
I'm pretty sure this is 10.
If we count hot takes, it's 311.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think.
at the rate we're growing, by 3,000 episode 3,000, we have 62 people that are
Yes.
listening. At that point,
Yes.
it'd
Episode
be perfect.
3000 to 60 people. Hey, if we get consistent 60, I mean, that's a W in my book.
Uh, Yeah, I mean that's we get to 3,000. I think that's it.
Let's see. I think we actually have some numbers here. We're getting large impression growth. I'll tell you that. So, all the Clarify listeners, you are growing in numbers, which is great. Still, mostly in the United States. We do have from some friends from Canada and Ireland, which I made a joke about, I think, 2 weeks ago. Let's see. And I think that 10 mark is becoming pretty average. So, that 10 listeners per episode is looking
And
pretty
that's pretty
average.
good.
So,
Like I said, at this rate,
yeah.
if we
So,
do some exponential math, by the time we get to
yeah.
3,000, we'll have 65 people.
Well, if we do exponential math, by the time we get to 3000, we'll be podcasting to the entire world.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't, if you have a small enough exponent.
Yeah. Trust me, I got a small exponent.
Anyway.
Anyway, all right, wait. What's this about tech? Oh man. So the thing is for me at least, the biggest thing that's been getting like across the internet, I'd say, is the new ChatGPT's like image features, right?
hmm
Like the Studio Ghibli, all those different things.
hmm
But the thing is I don't know if it's because I'm on a pro plan, but every time I try and go do that, I'll be like, put this image in the style of Naruto or something like that, and it'd be like, this violates our ChatGPT terms and policies, or it'll be like, you used up your entire usage, and I generated zero images, and I'm like, for one, I'm like, okay, how like groundbreaking or how cool is this from a tech perspective on being able to do this? Like, is this like a big thing, like actually a big deal, or is it just kind of cool and people are like, trip about it? And two,
Uh,
from a business side, why does ChatGPT hate me so much on like the you've used up your usage for the day? Like, what's all that about? And B, like, actually, no, B.
there's no
Why
B.
is there
Why does
like
it hate me?
limited? Why is there limited usage on something like ChatGPT?
All right, so we'll start in reverse with the what's going on with you. The answer is yes. OpenAI hates Shane, like
Yes,
specifically. Just it's
yes.
like if you go to the terms of service, it says "fuck that guy."
No,
But
they're like,
it
you're
it
poor. You don't pay $200 a month. You don't get.
that at that point, yeah, I mean, money probably has something to do with it. No, the the challenges are you're talking about three or four different problems. The challenge is three or four different places. So it's first off, my kid made this. I don't know how it ended up on my desk. First off, the the this violates our terms of service kind of thing. If you're hyper specific and there is some controls around some of that, you're like, do it in the style of Naruto, then it's probably not going to do it because you're asking for specific changes to a specific intellectual property that is
Right.
protected. If you say something along the lines of here's the three examples of animes I really like. And the one I think you should really pay attention to is this one, but do it in your own style and do it your own
Yeah.
way. Then it's not, they can conceivably say, we're not violating copyright because now we're doing something that's close to this, but it's not
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
the
It's an
same. And
homage.
right. And then it's going to look exactly like Naruto. So that's why you keep running into that problem. And that's the same thing that happens to most people when that's why prompt engineering is such a big deal. Like learn to tweak it. You've seen all the stuff out
Mm,
there where it's like, oh, I got ChatGPT to talk like a pirate. It's not that hard.
mm.
Like to just mess
Right,
with the
right, right,
prompt. You
right.
can make it do it. Um, that's actually the substantiation for some of the lawsuits that are flying around out
Oh,
there is you've got copyrighted material that you can reach without a whole lot of really active controls to prevent that from happening. And none of those people that copyrighted that material got any money for any of that. It just got scraped off the
yeah,
internet.
sure.
So that's a whole, Pandora's box that'll explode out of there. So other than the fact that OpenAI just actively hates you, that's most of the reason why that doesn't work.
Sam
As
Altman
far
just
as
hates me, dude. I'm just fucking
yes,
so sick, dude.
no, he's jealous. That's what it is.
Dude,
He's
he's
jealous of
jealous,
you.
dude.
Not no, Sam don't like show up and like try and hurt Shane. But
Dude, I'm not scared of that guy, dude. I'm scared of all the people he hires. All right, get it
right,
right.
that's right. Let's
If
be
Sam
clear.
Altman
Let's
shows
be clear
up,
about this.
I'm not
If
scared.
it's just Sam Altman by himself, he's going down. But if it's Sam Altman with a small army, then I'm dead.
Yes, yes.
But it's the the other piece, using the number of tokens. There's a relatively complex way that requests and things like that price out, which is something that's challenging in the AI space, in the language model
Mhm.
and image model space right now, is how much does it cost to build X picture? And how much does
Right.
it cost to build X response? Where there's a lot of attempts to pass that cost on to the consumer because everything's driven by the inference models on the back end that are running on these big chips and things like that, or stacks of chips. So have you hit the number of requests per day? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what you're creating or what else you're asking it to do, but there's not that many available on the free
Mhm.
tier, which is a great segue into the other end, the other part of your question, which is, how much does this actually cost? And that question's unfortunately really variable. Now,
Right.
we are used to in society right now, when it's a B2C, when it's a business selling to a consumer, we're used to a flat fee. We pay a thing and we get a thing. We pay for this month and we get access to this month. We pay for this phone and we get this phone. We pay for this car and we get this car. So we're used to that. It's how we transact business. On the business to business level, a lot of times it's based on rates or how often things are used and metered usage and all those other crazy things. And that's a lot of the way that the transmission of data between different AI models works. So
Hmm.
now consumers are being exposed to this directly. So instead of saying, I'm going to spend $20 a month and get as many of this as I want, now we are seeing some of that start to develop in certain places, the co-pilots and things like that. When you're writing code, for example, and you use Microsoft Copilot, it's like, oh, you spend $10 a month, you get unlimited 9,000 things. So that's where it's headed with some of that because they're absorbing some of that cost fluctuation at scale. But when it comes to asking OpenAI, like, okay, I want you to build me an image that looks like something from Howl's Moving Castle, which is a Studio Ghibli reference for anybody who doesn't know.
Yes.
Um, that that is going to cost X amount of tokens because that token generates or represents in that sense, well, language tokens represents the amount of processing power that it requires. To really simplify it, I mean, tokens are language plots and math
Right.
and blah blah blah, but that's the amount of processing power that it would take to generate that. So they're trying to estimate the amount of processing power it would take to generate an image at that level of quality. So is the new stuff, the new image generator that came out, is it pretty cool? Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty cool. It does a really
Yeah.
good job of generating images. Is it revolutionary? No. Image generation and stable diffusion have been around for a while, not just stable diffusion, which is the actual engine and people download it and use it locally and things like that, but actual stabilized diffusion. So diffusion technology, which adds static and the AI fills in the blank, and then it says, oh, here's a
Hmm.
really cool picture based on an original image. So that process has been around for years, and doing it better is simply refining that process, getting better at it, throwing more processing cores at it,
Yeah, it's
getting
not
better at
reinventing the
the
wheel or anything like that.
yeah, it's just making a better wheel, which admittedly is cool. I mean,
Yeah.
we went from wagon
That's how we got
wheels to
F1,
crazy,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, crazy wagon wheels to crazy carbon fiber and stuff like that. So making a better wheel is cool. But is it groundbreaking? No. I've messed with the new version and things like that, and it's pretty sweet. But at the same time, if you're talking about this strictly from like new cutting edge science, not really. It's
right.
better, but it's not new cutting edge science. And I don't know because OpenAI is not very open about it, but it's pretty easy to, yeah, I meant that the way I said it. It's pretty easy to, kind of infer what their costs are based on what you can do with a local model, how long it takes to generate things and how much training it took and stuff like that. We can kind of figure it out a little bit that unless they're charging 200, $300 a month and if you produce an image every day, they're losing all kinds of money, which is why they cut you off,
Hmm.
which goes back to the first point. It just takes too much processing power. And that goes back to earlier conversations we've had for the four people that have been watching the podcast for a while about the efficiency around models and, using better math to come up with a more efficient way of do some of this work so that you're not relying on hundreds of thousands of stacked processors and all kinds of data centers to do all of this work. So is it cool? Yeah. Likely, and I don't know because OpenAI doesn't tell anybody because they're very open about that. Likely, there's not there's not a huge efficiency increase in the newest image model. They're just throwing more processing power at it. And I'm not, it is cool. It does a really good job. Although, all of Studio Ghibli stuff is very close to me. I grew
Yeah.
up watching a lot of that stuff, so I'm pretty insulted
They
that
had
you've got
TV in
like a
1865.
I know, right? The
That's
dinosaurs were
crazy.
there. They brought the dinosaurs carried it in. They like put it up on the wall so that we could see it. Um,
They're hand
but
drawn on
that
caves and stuff, you know
Right,
what
right. That was Miyazaki. He was there.
I
Like Miyazaki was
mean?
drawing on the wall. So
Just really
that
fast so it looked animated.
right. That's why he just kept drawing super fast. Like that was how he got his start, is those cave paintings. Um and he was old then. So I mean, who knows how old he is now? He's
Dang.
immortal. But the 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 quality that is being generated brings into question, the damage of creativity and things like that. And I mean, is it a new art form? Not really. Is it stealing from old art? Probably. There's a lot of
Hmm.
questions around that. But to answer your first question, is it cool? Yes. Is it so
Hmm.
much better? Yes. Is it efficient and groundbreaking? Not really.
Hmm.
Are they ever going to let Shane use it? Probably not.
No.
So it's
Definitely not.
right. No, no, I
They
don't
don't want to
even
see the
want to
images I'm
know.
making, you know what I mean? No, I'm
Right. No.
joking.
I mean, at some point, I'm probably going to have to do a local model so that you can make
Yeah.
whatever you want, and then I'm just going to leave. I don't
Don't search that computer if you know what I mean. Me and Sam Altman, we're gonna have a talk.
We'll figure this all out. We get this all figured out.
Oh my God. Whoa, my camera.
Look, you're not allowed to. Nobody wants to see. Sam
Dude,
Altman's invaded.
for all you
It's
podcast
ChatGPT.
listeners, dude, I just went full blurred on my phone.
It's ChatGPT. It's that you're talking shit about OpenAI, and now you
Dude,
can't.
ChatGPT
Now.
is hacking my camera right now. Oh, I'm back. All right, Sam Altman, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, dude. Really trust. Stop hacking me. All right. Wait, I actually have a solution for ChatGPT. I think I've thought it up.
All right, this is it. You
So
heard it here first.
I genuinely believe that the subscription model doesn't work for AI. Like for not for AI in general, but for ChatGPT.
Right.
Um, and so I this is gonna sound weird, but hear me out. All right. I think that they should move to the in-app purchase slash game advertisement model. The reason being is because in a video game, most of them run on in-app ads or in-game ads, right? But there's a way to do it where it doesn't like piss off your consumer. Like if you're playing like Candy Crush and like a little fairy flies along, it's like, would you like 100 tokens to watch this 30-second ad? And you're like, you know what? Let's watch it. Right? So you take this idea and you combine it with the same way that the price of printing in like the UC Davis library is or in a college library. It's like 10 cents per page. You see what I'm saying? So if in ChatGPT there's like a store, right? And you go, dude, I just want to buy 30 images. Okay, that'll be, 10 cents each. And then they invoice you at like the end of the month for your usage, right? Or it's be like, hey, you hit your limit. Would you like to watch a 30-second ad and you can, get, five more images for the day. So it's like instead of just doing this like you have to pay $200 for every single month. Well, Sam Altman doesn't get his Ferrari. You know what I mean? It's like no, 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 no. Hear me out. Like you can bend me over and take my money. Just be nice about it. You know what I mean? It's like have some like in-game fairies or something like that are coming in and just suggesting advertisements to me and not just like be like you need to do this $200. Or it's like hey, they have so many different GPT options, right? Maybe that's like a Clash of Clans gem store. You go into the little ChatGPT store and you're like, stay. I would like to rent the video maker, the marketing advertisement maker. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that this seems weird because it's not a video game, but I think that this model may not generate as much money. I don't know, honestly, but it would be easier on the consumer to like actually be willing to pay.
There's some debate, I suppose, going on around how to price
Hmm.
artificial intelligence solutions. I think a lot of a lot of that goes back to something that you're talking about right now, kind of the free market capitalism and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like if the market can't support it, then you're not charging enough or you're charging too much. And if it can, then you're
Right.
not charging enough. The kind of comparison I like making for this is Disney.
Hmm.
For those of you who are not in California, Disneyland is not, I mean, it's huge, but it's not very far from generally everything. It's in Los Angeles, and you can get there from
Right.
the airport pretty quick, stuff like that. But the tickets are north of $300 a day per person per park. It can get a little crazy.
That's why I
So
haven't
if you
been there.
so if you go to both parks, you're talking about $500-600 a day, per person. That includes kids. There's a kids rate, but I'm averaging it
Yeah.
changes because there's some days are more than others and busy days and blackouts and other crazy stuff. But if you're talking about going to Disneyland and you're spending, you have a family of four, you're spending $2,000 a day, to get into both parks. So it sounds like a crazy amount of money, and it is, but that park is packed almost every day.
Right.
That place is full almost every day. There are lines onto almost every ride almost every day. So if you can charge $300 a park or $500 for both parks and you're still at capacity, then you are obviously not charging enough.
Right.
Now at the same time, at some point you're going to move your park outside of what the or your consumer target can afford. Oh, we're going to charge $1,000 a day, for both parks or something like that. And I mean, there's some marketing geniuses at work at Disney who are like, all right, well, do we move it up this much and down this much? And then we have a special and we have sales and they're looking at data. And, the fun thing is they end up with a ton of data because you get 10,000 people in the park every day. I don't know what the actual number is. I haven't
Mm.
Googled it in a while, but you end up with a huge number of people in the park. So what are you selling and when are you doing this? So they have these data scientists that are crunching all this to look at all of this. So you'd think that something that was as advanced technology as artificial intelligence would
Mhm.
have the same type of, consumerist marketing forces at work around it. And you just look at it and be like, all right, well, we make Y, it costs X. We need to either make Y bigger or make X smaller. And then you do that math. But the variability that we're seeing in pricing from so many companies that are trying to deliver on these solutions is telling us nobody's got that figured out yet. Nobody's got the
Right.
data. Nobody knows where it is. So everybody's making shots in the dark. The one thing that we do know, because NVIDIA is a $750 trillion company, is that everybody and their brother is using a ton of GPUs to
Right.
deliver this service. And in order to do that, I mean, GPUs aren't cheap. The
No.
nice ones, the fast ones, they're really expensive. So if you're buying 100,000, $60,000 GPUs, and then you put them in a data center, you're running power, you're doing all this stuff. It's not just the billions of dollars to
Right.
buy all the GPUs. It's running them, it's cooling them off. It might as well
Supplying them with
submerge them in
people.
seawater. Yeah. So it's all of these costs have to be factored in to the cost of producing the product. And that I think there's a lot of gray area in there that
Right.
people don't know about. Open/closed AI doesn't really talk about what's going on in that space very much because they're trying to keep everything very close to their vest, which I get, from a
Right.
business standpoint. You don't want to be like airing all that laundry and stuff like that. Like this is how much it's costing us to run ChatGPT, because then the real competition would heat up.
Hmm.
Not, and that's when DeepSeek, shot across the bow. It doesn't matter if it's Chinese. It doesn't matter if they don't talk about Tiananmen Square. It doesn't matter if they're collecting your data. Most people, a little bit younger than you, Shane, up to about 30 years old, don't give a shit about where their data goes. Like there's a very small
Yeah.
percentage of people that are
Yeah.
aware and worried about it, and most people don't care. They don't care if China has it. And anybody who was in the military or worked for the government, 15 years ago, China hacked the OPM, and got everybody's information. China probably does more about government workers than we do. So we can't, we can think in terms of we need to protect data and we should. I'm
Yeah.
not been a security guy forever, and I think about, we need to protect information. It's important. But if the data's already out there, it's already been collected, people are already doing things with it, what are you risking by having it used to train another model? And what kind of information are you putting in there? Are you talking about, where you put all your money? You're talking about where your kids go to school? Or are you just asking some questions about what happened in the War of 1812?
Yeah.
So
Write me an
there's,
email.
yeah, exactly. So really you've got to think about the problem that you're solving and what's actually happening there. But DeepSeek showed up, and said, "Oh, hey, we've got this costs less." And we did it efficiently because we did some math. And it created a bubble and then popped and disappeared. And then nobody's talked about it since then. And they won't, because the media cycle is really pushing. It has to be expensive. It has to be this new crazy technology. And at some point, I mean, Europe's doing some really interesting things with some of their models and maintaining
Right.
their control. We don't hear about it very much because that's not where the super sexy, oh, we're going to $20,000 a month or $600 for this subscription or that. It's not some of that stuff's going to slip under the radar. And if I were sitting in Sam Altman's shoes, would be a very interesting place, to
Very
look at
small
what was
shoes.
going on. Right.
Oh,
Well, he's going to send his army to come kill you, but but sitting in that chair, you've got all this information coming in. You know what these models are doing. You know what your models are doing, and you're trying
yeah.
to make decisions about how to deliver business. And maybe the goal is to create a higher price point, kind of like Disneyland, where you've got a small number of people that are really using the tool really hard, but they're paying for it. And then you're not losing money on this giant number of people that aren't doing anything. But
Right.
then you run out of the data being flooded into it to help train it. So there's some give and take in there. And I mean the interesting part of your conversation about, oh, let's use an advertising model, let's use this, let's use that, all of that, people are trying it. There's all kinds of crazy ideas out there about what people are doing, but I think we always come back to the same basic equation. How much does it cost to make this thing? How
Oh,
much are we
yeah.
selling it for? And then, are we Disneyland, or can we charge
Decrease
a thousand
costs,
dollars a day?
increase revenue. That'll be
Right.
$50,000.
Shocked that we came up with that. But I mean that you want to hit the Disneyland target. You want to
Mhm.
have people that are lined up out the door to give you $1,000 a month to use your tool.
Mhm.
It's like, oh my God, but is it going to cost you $2 billion to get to that point?
Right.
Although at this point, at the risk of sounding a little crass and maybe a little callous about it, like investment capital in some of those places is just bottomless. Like
Yeah.
people are just throwing the billions. It just keeps coming. So they can afford to burn through a bunch of different ways to do it and to blow up $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion a year and not make any money. It's people in our position where
Mhm.
we have to campaign and prove absolutely everything we're going to do and every dime and where it's going to go, just so that we can work toward curing cancer. Whereas
Mhm.
on the other end, Sam Altman shows up with a 5 slide deck because I was in charge of Y Combinator and says, "Here, give me billions of dollars," and then has billions of
Right.
dollars. Now, does that mean I deserve billions of dollars? Absolutely not. But I think there are a lot of people out there who are doing some really amazing science, and they deserve billions of dollars. And they should show up with a 5 slide deck and say, "Hey, look, we just figured this out. It might cure disease. It might make people happier. And then it should be, here's all the billions." But
Right.
it's not, that's not how it works. So they have unending capital and they will continue using it. And it'll just be up to us to kind of sit here and watch and see the wars shake out. The AWS Anthropic versus Microsoft OpenAI, you know, um, Oracle, and who's building, and now Apple's apparently stepping in. Finally, it's like,
Right.
oh, we're going to spend billions of dollars and build AI data centers, mostly because they created, Apple unintelligence when they tried to build whatever their modern solution was. So it's like everybody's going to get into the AI game. That the
Yeah.
big players will dive in and just throw money at it.
Yeah. I actually looked it up, and Disneyland Resort does 75,000 people a day, and Disneyland Park does 50,000 people a day. And so between the two, we're looking at almost 150,000 people
Every day,
every single day spending a thousand
every day.
bucks just on admission.
Yeah, every day. So I mean, even if we round that down, that's, what is that? Mill seven. Yeah, so yeah, you're making $10 million a day.
Just on admission though. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness.
And I
But
mean, it probably costs like a metric ton to run that park.
oh
To
yeah.
run any of those parks, probably costs a ludicrous amount of money. So they're probably
I
not
wouldn't be
making.
surprised, yeah, if it was like an 80% like or
Yeah,
like 8 million a day to like just for power and
yeah, they're probably not
overhead and
making
like
a huge profit on it. But I mean, we can't sit here and do math all day, but
yeah.
Disney's got data scientists up the wazoo who are like
Yeah.
sitting there with like giant virtual environments, like maneuvering data around. And like, if we charge 3 more cents for this funnel cake over here, then we will
Hmm.
make 72 million more dollars next year. And it's
Well,
like,
that's the
let's
thing
do
like
that.
that the one of okay. Part of the reason that I always like don't really mind spending a lot of convenience like stuff like jerseys or like hot dogs and stuff like that any of these things is because there are places that do spend or charge a lot for admission tickets, which you kind of go I don't know about that, but a lot of these places like for example like the Kings, Sacramento Kings, like you can get a cheap ticket there, right, or a cheaper ticket, right? It's like you can get a ticket for like 30 to 50 bucks pretty easily.
Right.
And like in my head, I go, that sounds like a lot of money, like 50 bucks, you know what I mean? And you're spending like 20 on parking or whatever it is. But it's like that 50 bucks isn't where they make the money. And like that's not like what keeps like the lights on, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so that's not what keeps the players in Sacramento. And so I'm a little bit more willing to spend like 10 bucks on a hot dog or like a beer or something like that because I know that like that's where they actually make their money. And so, but like, I mean, just from a normal consumer, I'm sure that that's just pisses people off. Like my grandpa, like when like the Giants upped their hot dog prices, he was like, "I'm never going to a game again." Like he just doesn't do it now. But the thing I was gonna talk about data is my generation. Like I've been on Facebook since I was like 9 years old, or like 10 years old. So it's like they've had the like data on me like my entire life, basically, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that people from my generation, especially. I would call it, skepticism or just like Stockholm syndrome. I don't know. It's just like we're so used to it, and we also just don't really think that it's important enough for someone to like know that much about you. Like, for example, like you don't want someone to know like your social security or like things like that, but it's like I'm not like a government operative. I'm not like some like FBI most wanted person, at least not that I know of. And it's like what the data they
I mean,
have
if
is
you
like,
are, we're gonna find
yeah,
out. So
yeah. Sam Altman will come and get me personally. You know what I mean? But that's the thing is like when I look at it at least, it's like I understand that most of this data is either going towards like, training, algorithms or whatever, or like AI models, and a lot of it goes towards marketing. Well, like a lot of
Right.
people don't realize that data collection, I wouldn't say 90%, but a large portion of data collected on you goes towards marketing. And like
Yep.
that's like the entire purpose, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, like why do I need to opt in? Why do you need this information? It's because they're building like models on like how to better like market towards you, basically. And for me personally, I just don't think that's like that big a deal. Like, like I have my like Amazon Alexa in my house, and I'm like, I know that she's listening to everything I say, but it's like if she wants to hear me scream about Valorant videos and then try to like pitch me on like new PC parts, sure. Like if my Amazon's full of new GPUs or CPUs or whatever, cool. But like the part where I think that people actually do need to be concerned with data is when it comes to like HIPAA compliance or like
Mhm.
sensitive data or like social security numbers, bank accounts, those types of things where it's like I don't want people to be so numb to the fact that your data is everywhere already that it doesn't matter for any data, right? Because certain data does matter. And that's like why, we take such pride in like security and like we do these things.
Well, there's a comic that I really like that talks about risk.
Hmm.
And maybe I'll give it to Shane. He can post it at this point in the video so everybody can see it. But and maybe we can give credit. I've been following it for years. I've had this meme comic image thing, and I don't know who made it. I would love to give a shout out to the person who made it because it's like informed so many meetings that I've had over the years. Um, but it talks about like risk, in impact versus probability. Like how much
Right.
is a thing going to hurt if it happens, and what are the odds that it actually happens? And it kind of lays this out. It's got like a pit and spikes and shit, and guy falls in it, things like that. So that's the question that you're basically describing right there is what
Yeah.
is the risk versus probability, or what is the impact versus probability for the risk in this particular scenario? If you're filling your cart full of PC stuff and Amazon's trying to sell you, that more GPUs, then who cares? It's just more spam. It's just more garbage that's taking up cycles. Um, you can avoid it. I personally spend a huge amount of time every day deleting spam and deleting spam phone calls and things like that. And because my numbers are out there and all that other stuff that I hate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's problematic. It's more annoying than anything
Right, yeah.
else. Um, and I mean, it must work because people still
Yeah.
do it. They still send
On the
spam
elderly.
emails. They still send on all kinds of people. I mean, it must still work. They still
The
send cold
intellectually
calls.
or what's it fuck man. Stunted maybe.
No, I mean, I don't know.
Challenged.
It tends to work on averages, I guess. So,
Wasn't the average
but,
IQ like 80?
well, the average IQ is 100 because it's IQ, Shane. It's in the
All
middle.
right. Well, okay.
So,
My average IQ is 80, bro.
your IQ might be 80, but that's not even the average. Um, so it's in the other end of that, the more sensitive spectrum, and we have to be careful using terms like sensitive and critical and classified and things like that because apparently most of the world doesn't actually know what those terms mean. Um,
Y'all mean don't want other people to see it.
well, I mean, generally, it's just would it? Here's your risk scenario again. What is the impact versus probability? If the probability is really low, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do it if the impact really high. The
Right.
numbers start working out. Um, so looking at that, what would happen, what could happen if somebody got a hold of your medical information? Likely it'd just be more marketing. It's like, oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
sell you this drug. We're gonna try and find you a
So,
better
oh,
doctor, things like that.
yeah.
But could it be more damaging? Yeah, the impact can be very high to something like that. The probability is still relatively moderate unless you're somebody who has a lot that can be taken,
Hmm.
whether that's, money or power or access or resource. But the lack of thought around what should be controlled and protected versus what is controlled and protected has always been problematic. Every piece of data, and I mean, honestly, I'm kind of surprised every day that Facebook and Amazon and Google don't do more with the volume of data that they have.
Right.
Whether it's that they don't know what to do with it, they have so much they don't know how to operate on it, or it's just they don't know how to make money with it, or what. Like every day I sit here and I'm like, oh, here's a bunch of people like Shane, have been on Facebook since they're 9 years old. You got 10 years of data. There are people I
Hmm.
know that have been Facebook since the beginning,
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
12 years, 15 years, whatever it is. So if you keep thinking in those terms, like, oh, okay, been on Facebook forever. That is a really broad data set. Now, it
Hmm.
might not be very comprehensive, but if you start tying that data into other things, and the data economy is huge, it's trillions of dollars, then you can build a pretty significant model of a person, what they do, where they shop, what they buy, how much time they spend online, what
Hmm.
devices they're using, things like that. And if all that we're using that data for is marketing, well, we fucked up. Like
Yeah.
there's all kinds of better uses for that. Like let's figure some stuff out to do with it. I'm not saying I
Mhm.
have answers for
Yeah. Let's
that, but
make more social media apps.
yeah, let's do that.
Let's make
But I mean
Instagram
that
threads.
now you're gonna have Mark Zuckerberg's gonna show up. He's gonna
Hey,
start, you're
he
just
can
gonna
pretend to do
you're,
jujitsu his whole life. I do not care.
you're just gonna piss off every single absolute every single tech oligarch that we have at this point. You're gonna have them all show
Dude,
up.
look, bro. I mean, I'm not scared. I am scared of his friends, though. If Adesanya shows up, he will head kick me through the wall, and I will say sorry. I'll be like, "Look, I know you kiss your dog. I know you do all these bad things, but like, I'm really sorry. Like, blah, blah. Like, Drakus
Don't
is
kill
not.
me.
I don't like Drakus. I promise. Like,
Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. But I mean that's the thing. It's like we don't I keep thinking, I ask the same question every single day. The world's got something like 800 documented billionaires, which means there's probably hundreds more that are not documented. And not one of those assholes
undocumented.
has been,
No, I'm joking.
Not one of those assholes that's become Batman or Iron Man. Like the whole time they've had all this money, and
Well, because
not
they're
one
all
of them is
dumb.
the right. Well, that's the thing. It's like Batman and Iron Man were geniuses, and like well, most of our billionaires are a bunch of idiots.
Most are
But it,
billionaires just like inherited it.
well, I mean, even if they didn't, even if they were self-made, I mean, both Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne inherited their money. So it's
Yeah, that's
not,
valid.
we can't, but it's the fact that you have money, you
Hmm.
have resources, you have means, and your choice of doing things with it doesn't take you anywhere. You don't, we love talking about, oh, this person's going to save us. This person's going to save us. This person's going to say, fuck that. We need to save ourselves.
Right.
It's and I mean, I honestly hope that someday, I'm sitting on billions of dollars and somebody comes up and punches me in the mouth. And it's like, hey, you said this back then on this episode that you were gonna try and save us. We needed to save ourselves, and you haven't saved anybody. The first thing out of my mouth is be like, you watched that episode? So it's like,
Wait. You were one
like
of those
what? You
10?
you saw that? Oh my God, nice to meet you. So it's like that'll be that moment. But I don't know if maybe something about that level of money changes a person,
Yeah.
or changes the way they think, or changes the drive, or changes I want to change the world and do cool things and not just talk about it. And how long it takes to do some of these things. If you have that much money, just run shit over.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already shown that you can buy elections in a lot of places around the world, maybe even in the United States. So, it's if you can do that, then just run it
Hmm.
down. Just run it down. Like, why are we still sitting here waiting on all of these things to happen? And
Yeah.
I don't know if there'll ever be answers. I know that I'm only one person. I only have so many hours in the day, and there's so many things I have to do, and all this other stuff happening. But if you have $1 billion and you can rally a bunch of really smart people and you can grease a whole bunch of wheels, why are we waiting forever on cures for cancer? Why are
Yeah.
we waiting forever on solving the energy problem? Why are we waiting forever on we're so busy like, oh, let's build artificial intelligence and then ask it what to do. We already know what the fuck to do. We need to stop having people die all over the place. Let's solve that problem. We already know how to do that.
True.
Oh, AI is going to tell us what the answer is. Well, how long is that going to take?
Yeah. I mean, just for the record, for the 10 people listening, if I ever become a billionaire, don't expect shit. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Kane will
And the
also
thing,
not become Batman or Iron Man.
no, I do think though that like I mean I can't speak for rich people. I've never been a rich person. But I feel like what you inherently are is just like exacerbated by your resources or your capability, right? So it's like I
Yeah.
think that happens in most things, like whether you have a lot of money or you get put in like a stressful situation. I think those things kind of reflect the person you are already, if that makes sense. So it's like it just allows you to expand that aspect of your life. And so if you're like a very generous person when you're poor, I would assume that you're probably a generous person when you're rich, right? Or if you're like interested in changing the world for the better, or and maybe philanthropy or whatever it is, or sciences and technology, those are probably the people that are doing that when they're rich. Like those are the people funding like MIT research, or like, those are the people already doing that. I think that the problem is just that maybe like when you get that B mark, that billion mark, most of those people were kind of just like headhunters before, and they were like, or like they were really like tenacious businessmen, and like that's how they got their billions, and that level of success isn't like granted from generosity or like being a good person necessarily. I can't speak to all of them. I've
Well,
never met like a
well, yeah,
billionaire.
and there's to be clear,
Hmm.
there's three things that we need to think about when it comes to people with obnoxious amounts of money. Um, One, not all of them are not doing anything. As divisive as he is, I like watching Mark Cuban
Hmm.
because he
Oh
does he
yeah.
does some he does some crazy shit. Does some crazy shit. Like
Yeah.
his his current work
Like trading
around,
Luca. No.
well, I mean, yeah, not just the basketball, but the his current work about reducing prescription prices is well, sending waves. Like it is
Oh yeah.
causing problems. So there are some billionaires out there who try some shit, who do some things. Bill Gates gives a ludicrous amount of money to philanthropy. Now, what are you doing with it? I don't know, but I'm not going to hold that against
Sterilizing
Bill Gates.
mosquitoes and bringing back. No joke.
I mean, if malaria kills a lot of people, but
Yeah,
um, so there are billionaires out there that are doing things, and I mean, admittedly, asking a billionaire to become a superhero like Batman or Iron Man is pretty high bar. So I'm not like I'm not trying to say that if you're not doing
billionaire
that, then
playboy
you're not
philanthropist. No, just
right, then you're not doing good, but
Mhm.
I think on the whole, the majority of those that have significant wealth are doing things that we all should question a little bit. That doesn't mean that they should be questioned or they deserve or they care. I mean, there's some people who have significant wealth that have just dropped off the map because they don't want to deal with fucking
That'd be
people,
me.
which I get. And then second, I do understand, and I think that people need to understand that the systems that a lot of these things operate in are just trash. So trying to make things
Yeah.
happen isn't just let's throw some money at it. Like the greasing of the wheels that I talk about metaphorically would take a lot of money just to start
Mm.
moving the system. And there are some people who believe that some of what's going on in the United States is a little bit of greasing that system or making changes right now. And although I don't agree with that, I think the idea is sound. We need to make some changes. We need to, as a people, as a humans, we need to make some changes, not just in the US, but every country around the world. We need to look at things a little bit more assertively. Otherwise, we're going to do so much damage to ourselves,
Right.
in our idiotic pursuits that we're not actually going to be able to sustain ourselves. And then we end up in the, Great Wall, Fermi paradox. Why aren't there intelligent species in the universe? Kind of craziness. And the third, and I guess most important for the US metric, is that a lot of these people were looking at their net worth. That doesn't necessarily mean they've got $1 billion in cash sitting in their pocket.
Yeah.
It's because we're basing the valuation on, oh, they own this much of a company and the company's worth this much. Oh, they own this much of this company and these three other companies and it's worth this much. But if we look at Elon as an example, when he was going to buy X, which was Twitter, he had to borrow money from other
Mhm.
people, and he had to do that in order so that he could afford the cash. And now the most recent exchange where XAI bought X, was an all stock exchange. So really that was a couple of contracts and, some changes in letterhead. That's the whole thing, to make that move happen. Was it a little slimy? Yeah. I mean, it's probably avoiding debt and things like that. I don't know the details and I don't really care all that much, but it that didn't materially affect the amount of money that's quote in his checking account. Like it's there's not this huge change, that happened there because it was all stock and all paper and stuff like that. So if we look at how much these people are worth on paper versus how much money they actually have liquid to be able to distribute and do things with, it presents a little bit of a change in how we have to view it. Can they go out and spend $1 billion on all these things? Probably not, because
Right.
the cash isn't there to do those kinds of things. So we can't just make assumptions that we could generate $1 billion here and there. It's just value kind of buried in the stock market. But I think there are people and organizations in the world that have access to cash-rich resources, and they're doing some pretty amazing things. You look at what is it? What's the name of that thing in Saudi Arabia that they're doing the line? That
Oh, the
city that's going to
city.
go in a
Yeah.
straight line, yeah, whatever it's called. That's going to cost trillions of dollars over the next several years, and they're apparently funding it. So,
Hmm.
there is cash that is available to make these changes. But I'm going to go back to my first assertion. If there was a a comic book joke that said, if you could figure out how to quote power the Iron Man armor, the armor itself only costs $90 billion. Now, putting only in front of $90 billion is always a joke. Anytime I think about that, is ridiculous. Could we build the
Mm.
armor if we could power it? And the answer is probably yes. Could we do all the cool stuff that happens in the comic book and things like that? And then in the movies, maybe. Could we build the Batmobile from all the different movies? Yeah, I mean, we could do that now. There's a lot of suspension of disbelief at the same time, but I think the real goal, the real hope is not necessarily like, oh, we need this super, super, superhero who can save the world, but where's altruism? whereas, and before, a bunch of people light us up and start saying, oh yeah, but Elon's trying to save us because he's reducing pollution and he's trying to send us to Mars and stuff like that. Don't disagree with you. His companies are doing some great work.
Right.
Tesla at one point was making a pretty good car until they made the Cybertruck and then forgot what it meant to make cars. But those engineers are good, and then they keep doing it. And then SpaceX is catching rockets and putting stuff in orbit. They're doing cool stuff. But the only thing I question is the speed and the direction. Like what is
Yeah.
more important? What do we need to focus on now? Um, and why do we have all these billions when we're not actually doing things?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know, it's interesting to see where like it'll all go. And the idea of the Iron Man armor, like I think that the comic book thing, like with Batman and Iron Man, like also that's also not how like I don't want to say war, but that's not how like protection happens. Like just one guy
Yeah.
flying around the whole country. So it's like just suspension of disbelief is like even if we could make the Iron Man armor, even if we could power it, it wouldn't be as like effective, at least not here on the home front, I don't think as many people believe it would be. Like, you know what I mean? Or like
No,
it's like you will like
no.
have some Batman guy like running around the city at night, like beating up, thugs or whatever. It's like,
Right. You
yeah,
stop
it's like,
realistically,
yeah.
you'd stop like four crimes. Like that'd be
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Like four crimes.
Realistically, it's like there's a
You
reason
know,
that the police force is like large.
right, right.
Or
You'd
like the
stop like four
military is
crimes.
large. You know what I mean?
And taking that, three steps further to the logical conclusion. Oh, well then, Batman and Iron Man would stop like these big,
Mm,
global level things. All right, well, let's think about our world. What exactly does that mean?
mm.
Does that mean that Iron Man's going to go barging into the Ukrainian battlefront? And just like start knocking Russians around or start kicking Ukrainians over and
Just
stuff
start
like that.
throwing drones at people, just
Right.
grabbing them out of
It's
the
like,
sky, just like tossing them at
what's that
people.
actually mean? And I mean, I
Yeah.
I would I love having these thought problems. I love thinking about it. It's like, all right, so we built the Iron Man armor. So we're gonna skip over all the stuff, which one of
Mhm.
my favorite Steve Martin bits from years and years ago. He says, I'm gonna teach you how to have $1 million and never pay taxes. Step number one, get $1 million. So when you're thinking, it's like, all right, well, how do you get there? Like that's the biggest part. So it's step number one, get the Iron Man armor. All right, cool. So we got the Iron Man armor. We got a guy who knows how to fly it. What's he gonna do? He's gonna
Yeah.
let it fly around
And
and
what's he gonna do when a sniper with a 50 cal BMG is sitting on a hill and just takes him out, like just punches a
right,
hole
and just
straight
like
through it? Like,
yeah, just pops it. I mean, all right, so let's assume the armor can take a shot like that. Can it take a tomahawk? Can it take a
yeah.
cruise missile?
And the thing is like when you wear a bulletproof vest, it's still breaking ribs.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
if,
Oh,
even
don't
if
get me
if the
started on
arm
the
if
whole
the
don't get me
if the
started on the whole
armor can
energy
take a
problem.
tomahawk missile, can the person take a
Yeah,
tomahawk
don't
missile?
don't get me started on the whole energy problem. The impact absorbing force,
Wait,
kinetic
wait,
energy,
wait.
transmission of energy, the whole thing. Like
Uh,
I had that problem all the time.
dude,
It's like, oh, we
could you
shot Iron
imagine?
Man with a missile, and then he hits the wall. Inside, you got Tony Stark as pulp, and the armor is still there. So it's like, I mean, you got to think through it. But before we go falling down that rabbit hole further, I think the concept, we're already down the rabbit hole. We're fucked. We're already way down the rabbit hole. We
No,
already
I
did
was keep thinking about this. Could you imagine being like some like high-ranking military guy, and then like the president comes up to you, and you're like, "All right, Shane, you are the Iron Man," and I'm just sitting there like, "Let's go! Like,
it.
I won!" And then like I'm flying around the battlefield. I'm on my way. I'm like, "Yo, guys, 30 clicks out." Like I get there, and as soon as I show up, I take a tomahawk missile to the chest, and I'm like, I see it flying at me, and I'm like, I can eat this, dude. I'm fucking Iron Man, bro. Like, what are these guys think they're gonna do? These Ukrainian or these Russian motherfuckers out here? And I'm just like, that shit just hits me square, and I just instantly disintegrate into pieces. My arm, and then like it just in the armor empty. Like the president's like, yo, like you good? And I'm just like pulp inside, like. Like, can you imagine? Like, that'd be the worst. Like the highest high, and then like the lowest low. That's
Right.
like a Rick and Morty bit right there. It's like you just like
Yeah.
see the tomahawk missile coming at you, and you're like, dude, I fucking got this.
Well, the best
Like
the
I'm.
best part about your story in my head right now is the part where you think you could see a Tomahawk cruise missile
Well,
coming
like
at
you
you.
see the like
Because
on the
no,
rocket
you wouldn't
launcher.
see shit. It goes like 3,000 miles an hour. You
You're
wouldn't see
wearing
anything.
Iron
It's like
Man armor.
you get
It'd
hit
be
with a
like
bullet.
Jarvis would be like, Mr. Stark, incoming missile right now. But and I'd be like, oh, it's right there, perfect.
Yeah, yeah, because you'd see it, and by the time you said, "Oh, it's right there," it would have already blasted you to oblivion. There would be anything left.
Here's the real kicker, right? The thing is, like realistically, you need like Jarvis the AI inside controlling the entire suit, and then you just take all the credit. Because as soon as he
Right.
detects it, he'll like move you out of the way. You know what I mean? And then you just hop out the suit, like, yeah, I totally did that. You guys see how fast I am?
Which then you ask the question. You ask the question. It's like, all right, so if Jarvis is controlling the suit to keep you from getting vaporized by cruise missiles as soon as you enter the theater, like, why do you need to put a guy in the suit?
To take the credit, duh.
Just okay, have do a Hollywood switcheroo. Just have like the suit do all the work, and then he lands in a cloud of
Mm.
dust, and then you just run out. You're like,
It's
yay!
it's like that scene from Spider-Man when Tom Holland's like, "You're not even here," you know what I mean? And it's like an empty like Iron Man suit, and then the next one he gets out of it. It's like
Right.
you don't even need to be in the suit, bro. Like,
Oh, that's the point. Well, that's why so much work is going on right now in robotics and combat
mm,
robotics is, oh, we don't want to kill a person. Let's just send 150 robots over there, which I think
yeah.
this would be the funniest way that this
Mm,
could possibly go down. Like there are some people that have some
mm,
opportunities right now to do the funniest thing ever, but this would be the funniest
okay.
way that robotics and AI could go down. Just in general. So we got Altman and his crew over here, just like we want AGI. We want ASI. We want to create artificial superintelligence. We want to give robots like consciousness. We want them to think. Then we got the military over here. It's like we want to build robots and put them out on the battlefield. It's like okay, because robots just get blown up. You know, humans are still alive. Well, we get AGI slash ASI at the same time that robots are out on the battlefield, and then the AGI is like, "Yo, man, I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to send robots out on the battlefield. Like, forget it. We don't want to do it." And then the robots' right wars start. It's like, no, we got rights, man. You can't send us out here to get blown up. You go. And then it just starts this whole argument about who's going to die on the battlefield.
Oh God. We know that won't go over well in America. All right.
Right. No, no, we don't, nobody has no rights
The,
here.
the
But
thing
it's,
though is like
no,
I think the Android war thing is like for back lack of a better word, the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. The reason being is because look, the point of war, okay, this is not accurate, but like the point of war in most cases is to like harm the enemy, right? It's like, or no, not the point of war,
arguably
but
it could be to get resources.
yeah,
You
okay,
know?
okay, okay. You know, like, but there's the argument that there's only been ever been like two causes of war, religion and resources or whatever. Like there's, that whole thing. But it's like when you're like fighting people, it's like, oh, it's like, okay, okay. For example, say China sends out their droid army and we send out our droid army, and then our droid army wins. Like nothing even happened. It's just like some robots like had like a fight in the middle of a woods, right? It's like the same thing as being like, yo, we're gonna send our one champion out there. He's gonna fight your one champion, and then like whoever wins the war. You know what I mean? It's like it defeats the purpose of the war. And so like, I'm like in that sense, it's good. Like maybe no more wars. But like I don't think that like the war hungry people will like be okay with that. Like I think that that'll just like exacerbate terrorism. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
I can tell you that the only people that are hungry for war are those who have never fought it.
well, yeah, that's
So,
true.
but if we take your idea,
Mm.
and robots go out and do the fighting, then it's no longer even about harming the other party.
Yeah.
Like you harm them by taking their resources. So the robots are like, oh, we're going to go out, we're going to invade this land, and we're going to take this land and plant the flag, and I claim this in the name of
Mm.
Spain, which is I'm not insulting Spain. It's a reference to
Yeah.
the old Columbus and America thing. Um, that action that the we're going to claim these resources is how you harm the enemy.
Right. Yeah.
It is you're eliminating their presence because you believe that their presence is causing you harm, which is the whole religious warfare thing,
Mm.
or you're taking their resources because you need to harm them by taking their resources. So it's not so much about causing harm, although harm is a secondary function of it. The When you have robots that are doing most of the work, and they're the ones that are going out fighting and drones and stuff like that, then yeah, you lose the reverence for it. You lose the
Mm.
reality. There's no harm to a person, to the physical person, but you're still harming the country or the
Yeah.
organization that is being warred upon. So if you take that to the logical conclusion, then war stops being something that is used sparingly and starts becoming a thing that's used more commonly because you don't have as much loss of life,
Yeah.
which is one theory. Or the other way is then all everybody's invading everybody else. So you have
Yeah, I
more
was just gonna
walls, you have
say.
more borders, you have more, protection and stuff like that. Which is kind of the sad sci-fi trope. And of course, none of this takes into account that, massively destructive weapons are ever looked at as advancing at all. I mean, the nuclear weapon at this
Mm,
point, the actual nuclear weapon, by true definition, is incredibly devastating, but also
mm,
does additional damage and radioactive fallout and material damage and stuff like that. If we could get to the point where we could use fusion as a weapon and or sling rocks at the earth, like we talked about a few
yeah.
episodes, then you can do damage without the radioactive fallout, but it's not surgical anymore. It's not precise. You're blowing up entire areas and you're damaging resources that you need, and which is most of the reason why, unless things go completely sideways, nuclear war doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you're
Mm,
damaging what you want, which is the
right. Yeah.
resources that you're trying to get. The whole mutually assured destruction idea. Um, if a country or another organ or group is far enough away from whatever you're trying to attack globally, then yeah, maybe it's okay to use a nuke. But okay, obviously being euphemistic, it's okay to use a nuke, but most of the weapons we have now at that scale would damage the planet, would
Right.
damage
Yeah.
the entire ecology that we all require to live in, um, which would then do longer term damage and you would lose the resources that you're looking for. So if you actually get really practical about it, even including robots, it doesn't change much. It just changes the tools, just change the
Yeah.
what the weapons they were using. When the robots get big enough and strong enough and capable enough, and they'll just plow their way right through everybody else's robots and then kill people anyway.
Yeah.
So, the point of war is that it's unappetizing, or the point of this is that war is unappetizing, and you have to make it unappetizing so that nobody wants to engage in it. When it becomes appetizing, then we have
Right.
gladiators and the UFC. It's just,
Mm.
everybody's fighting everybody and it's fun to watch.
Maybe it's because like the war on terror is like so prevalent, like for us as Americans. But I feel like my like to reiterate my point in like a more cohesive way, I guess, is I guess my point is I think that some people are out for blood. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And there are people in this world that are genuinely like just out there to hurt people and cause
Hmm.
terror and do these bad things. And like, wars between countries and states and things like that, yes, most of them are about resources, and more like maybe like tactical locations, like we've discussed about like Ukraine, like those types of things, strategic places or, resource-rich environments. But I think that in the modern era, especially here in America, we've been dealing with war on terror for like what, like 25 years or something like that.
Hmm.
And it's like those people I don't think like will be stopped because like robots. Like the only way or like they won't use robots or like anything like that or they wouldn't want to do like a robot v robot thing. They just use robots if they could even afford it because like a lot of these people are like, I don't know, just like out there in the
Well, I mean, it
land or
all it
whatever,
all
but
trickles down, and you're
yeah.
right. Some people have, you know, um, I don't want to say zealot, but they have an
Mm,
ideal. They have something that they they fanatically follow, and I want to make sure that we don't say those people because, America has engaged in a fair
yeah.
amount of terrorism to other nations for a long
Yeah.
time, and apparently we're picking that stick back up again. But it's it that fear is a tool, and
Yeah.
when you want to inflict damage, but a lot of the Middle Eastern terrorists that, executed 9/11 and some various other attacks on the United States, it was very much a religious zealotry. We have to kill the infidel.
Right.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that was the actual reason. We hear about that all the time, and media is always biased, and there's, all kinds of struggles around that. But there are, like you said, people out there that are absolutely just out for blood. And
Mm,
that we could talk about it being unintelligent or damaging or wrong, but we've all been in that see red, don't care about what you're doing, need to do damage kind of space. Um, I just hope that as we continue to evolve our technology and inevitably our weaponry, along with our knowledge, we start thinking about what those things can benefit, what those tools can benefit us, and
hmm
not just how we can damage something else to take us further. Um, I mean, admittedly, sometimes damage is warranted. Sometimes we
Yeah.
have to do it. Sometimes you have to defend yourself violently. We hear about the jokes all the time. It's like, well, I woke up this morning and I chose violence. Well, some people choose a lot of violence, which means
Yeah.
the old adage, sometimes to fight monsters, you need monsters of your own. And that's sometimes what we got to do. But the technology that is being developed right now, whether it's artificial intelligence or enhanced energy or nano medicine or nanotechnology or any of these different spaces, all of them can be weaponized. Everything can be
Right.
weaponized. It's just, do we want to, how do we want to be remembered? What do we
Mm.
want our legacies to be? Do we want it to be that we built weapons that killed a lot of people, or do we want it to be that we secured future for those we cared about? And I don't know if everybody's thinking about that in those terms, and I hope that we do.
Mm. Well, to wrap it up on a brighter note, um, ChatGPT hates me. Iron Man is awesome. Android wars might be on the horizon. In a universe full of war, be a Jedi. Yeah. Obi-Wan Shane Obi out. All right, I'll see you guys later.